which, by the way, if Vegas gave Crosby, traded Crosby to the Raiders, and Vegas got the Bears' 25th pick, you know who's available potentially at the 25th pick? Fernando Mendoza's number one college target, Omar Cooper, the receiver. So you could unite Fernando Mendoza with its number one split end in college. What a great, and that's a huge need for the Raiders. Wide receivers, their number one need outside of quarterback. So it works for everybody.
Yeah, that's the only part that he really mentions with the Raiders. Everything else is it's all about the Bears. So I wanted to highlight this clip for you, Las Vegas Raiders fans. You know, I've talked about this before, and I just, you know, I was on board with trading of Crosby, but the more and more you kind of see some of these moves and some of these discussions, the more and more I'm like, you're reportedly going to get 2 first and another player. Yeah, make that move. Make that move, because you are going to be able to make, you're going to be able to draft such impact players pretty immediately, pretty immediately, and just honestly, it's like Nike, man, like just do it. You need that draft capital to rebuild this team. You can make this offense legitimately something this season, and you're still going to have high round picks later in the draft. And I just think at this point, having a Max Crosby, it doesn't do what you ultimately need at this point, and it doesn't fit the timeline of this team. And so I just think, you know, especially if you make a move like this before the draft, don't pull a Jerry Jones and do it after the draft. That really hurt the Dallas Cowboys. Make no mistake about it. Because they were not able to use that draft pick this past draft. And so their defense was awful, you know, for pretty much the entire season until they now needed to make another move, you know, before the trade deadline. But you do it now, you can immediately in this draft at a minimum 2 players. But really, man, if you're competent, you're drafting at least 3 or 4 players. This is now including like Mendoza and whatnot. That can have a pretty large impact this season. And not meaning that like now it's like they just automatically ushered in a new era because they're still young. They're still draft picks, and they still, you know, they're not going to necessarily just hit the ground running and beat perfection, but like they can make a massive impact. And then you're talking about now the following year having another draft where you have 2 firsts. That's pretty awesome, man. That's you're looking at this now 2-year window where you've just now added, again, if you play your cards right, 6 great players potentially that now are legitimately ushering the new era of the Las Vegas Raiders on both sides of the ball. Let's just split it right down in the middle. And I'm not saying this is exactly how it's going to fall, but let's just split it right down the middle. You add now 3 top Pro Bowl adjacent players on offense and defense over these next 2 years, whether they're actual Pro Bowlers or all pros. Like, you know, don't get lost in that. But they're just legit. They're legit players, and you're not paying them any money either. And now by year 2, now by, what would it be, 2027, 2028 season or whatever, you're in the situation where you now have like 6 players, you know, 3 on offense, 3 on defense, that you're not paying a lot of money. They're all trending in the right direction. You have the right coaches. You have the money now to be able to now make a move in free agency and buy that O-line, buy that corner again, whatever it may be. I mean, just going into year 2, you're set now to make a legitimate run at the, you know, at a minimum the division, right? At a minimum the division. That's just a minimum. That's just the minimum. And so I just think when you're in this type of situation, when I look at the NFL in general, I constantly look at timelines. I'm always looking at timelines. And sometimes it's like your best chance to win a Super Bowl is right now, so do it. You know, sometimes it's like it's not, so don't do it, right? Like I'm always looking at timelines. Timing is so important in the NFL. And to me, a move like this timeline just makes the most amount of sense. And again, I love Max Crosby. I want him in the locker room. All that good stuff. But I just think what you can get for him matches the timeline for the Raiders quite perfectly. And again, now, like I had talked about in a previous Raiders video, when you look at the Chargers, when you look at the Broncos, when you look at the Chiefs, the Raiders within this, you know, timeline that I'm talking about, they're going to have all the money to spend and all the freedom to do so in the flexibility, where the Chiefs, The Broncos and the Chargers will not. Okay? They simply will not. So you're in just such an incredible position, let alone, and that was just the example of when I said, like, 6 adjacent kind of, pro bowlers, maybe all pro, again, just kind of like that, just within range, within touching distance, let alone if you actually got some bona fide dudes, right? Where you're just like this guy, right? Like, and that's not to mention what happens now with like the Ashen Gentes and the Bowers of the world, right? That's now, if those guys can now fully realize their potential because your team is actually rounded out, you have the right coach, the O-line is not a massive liability, etc. It's like now you got a squad. Now you got a squad. Now you're looking at 8, 9 guys who you're like, yeah, man, we are legit. And yet we still got the freedom and the flexibility to go out and get like the equivalent. Obviously, I know it didn't work out for the Raiders, but like the equivalent of being like, we can add a Devontae Adams for, $25 million. You like, that would actually be a nice addition. Or like the Cooper Cup type addition, or, taking a stab at a Saquon bargain. Again, I'm not saying you need those specific players. I just mean that type of spending and free agency. You're like, actually, that would really round us out right now. Like, yeah, no, we got the money, we have the ability, we have the foundation, right? When you're spending money to add some sprinkles rather than to rebuild the whole thing, rebuild the whole Sunday. Again, it's what the Eagles were able to do. Boom, Super Bowl. Boom, it's what the Rams were able to do. I know they didn't win the Super Bowl, but they were an elite top team. They were clearly an elite top team and were the front runners to win this. All the suit, they're all throughout the course of the season. So I just think the timeline, that's what I would really focus on. The timeline, and just look at the moves that you can make over these next 2 years. And then now look at the rest of the league. Look at the Bills, look at the Ravens, look at the Chiefs, look at the chart. Just look at your conference and see where all their timelines are. You can be in such an amazing situation to have a great roster with tremendous flexibility and money to spend when other teams are they kind of have to be a lot more conservative, a lot more strategic with some of the moves that they make and have to make some difficult decisions. I'm just saying it's not a bad move. It worked with the exact same thing with the Philadelphia Eagles. When they won the Cowboys, they were like, oh, we got Micah, we got CeeDee Lamb, we got D. They had no flexibility. They got no actual flexibility to move. The Eagles were able to make the move. They were able to get Saquon, they were able to do it. They were able to add CJ Garner, John. Like, they were able to make some moves. It's the difference between winning and losing, and it's a timeline. It's a timeline. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about my timeline and the Las Vegas Raiders? Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun, and please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much.